Previously on the originals, Hope turned the werewolf Henry into a hybrid, which led him to kill a vampire. Desperate for her father's attention, Hope hid her mother, forcing Klaus to return to New Orleans. When Klaus and Freya came to find Haley, they discovered her coffin covered in blood, but Haley was missing. Henry was sealed inside a wall as punishment for his mistake, but a mysterious figure removed the bricks imprisoning him. Not long after, Hope discovered Henry's corpse. Henry had been brutally gutted, his heart torn out and his body hung up for display. The long peaceful town of Chicken Wing is now rife with undercurrents, as an unknown force sets its sights on the Michelson family. During this time, Elijah had spent 7 blissful years in a passionate romance with his new girlfriend. He solemnly confesses his love to Antoinette, then pulls out a massive engagement ring. Antoinette is deeply moved, but she doesn't immediately accept. She says such a beautiful moment cannot go without a champagne toast. Antoinette returns to their cottage to fetch the champagne, but a stranger is already waiting for her. Klaus rudely smashes Antoinette's champagne, declaring that his family is in crisis, and now is the time for the brothers to join forces against their enemies.
I'm taking my brother home tonight.
Klaus tries to compel Antoinette to refuse Elijah's proposal and demands that she leave the bar forever. Antoinette, in a daze, returns to Elijah's side and calmly suggests that they play a song together. But Antoinette isn't compelled by Klaus. She informs Elijah of Klaus's visit. Elijah seems to realize the gravity of the situation and tells Antoinette to take everyone and leave. They share a passionate kiss, and Antoinette gets up to leave, while Elijah continues to play the piano. Staying composed, Klaus appears before Elijah, inviting his brother to come home with him, but Elijah refused Klaus' request, saying he was not Klaus' brother. Klaus, furious, says that Elijah cannot abandon the 1,000-year-old family vow for the sake of a mere fairy tale. Elijah counters, blaming Klaus for ruining the beautiful life he had built. The brothers lock eyes. Klaus grabbed his brother's head, attempting to break through the mental block that restrained his consciousness, but Elijah resists and knocks Klaus to the ground. Klaus is hurt, not expecting that his brother would ever raise a hand against him. He continues to plead, saying he took a great risk in coming to ask for his help. However, Antoinette hasn't left but is hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. She broke off the handle of the wooden crate, gripping the sharp wooden stick in her hand, but the sight of maggots squirming all over the ground leaves her horrified. Klaus continues to plead with his brother.
Haley is missing.
Yet Elijah remains cold, saying that the name means as little to him as Michelson. Klaus suddenly throws his brother onto the table. Lightning flashes outside the window, signaling that the strange phenomenon is escalating once again, but Antoinette plunges the stake into Klaus's body. Elijah, feeling relieved, takes Antoinette's hand and they hurriedly leave. Klaus, lying on the ground, is once again surrounded by writhing maggots. Antoinette said that Klaus couldn't be killed. Before she even finished speaking, Klaus appeared behind them. Elijah declared that he would never go back with him.
I'm begging you, brother. You may not think you know me, or Rebecca, or Cole, or Freya, or Hope, or even Haley, but we are your family.
Elijah said that he had lost his memories, but he knew who he was. Ever since he met Marcel in New York, he had been investigating his origins, and he knew every member of the Michelson family. Klaus replied that knowing this information was useless. What Elijah had lost was the bond of family that had existed for 1,000 years. Elijah laughed mockingly, saying that his past self had never known a moment of happiness. He had always been cleaning up Klaus's messes, and he didn't want to go back to living that way. Elijah suddenly twisted his brother's neck. Elijah and Antoinette hurried back to their cottage. Antoinette was still busy packing, but Elijah pointed out that she knew the stake wouldn't kill Klaus and that she had been secretly taking Vervain. She must have known his true identity for a long time. Antoinette apologized, saying she just didn't want to bring up his past and make him sad. But Elijah had also lied to her. He knew his true identity but hadn't told her. Elijah said he didn't want Antoinette to know about the darkness in his past. Antoinette reminded him that they needed to escape quickly, but Elijah said it wasn't necessary anymore. He had hurt Klaus deeply, and Klaus wouldn't bother them again. Klaus, having awakened on the ground, dialed his sister's number.
I couldn't find him in France. He's gone.
To show his determination to say goodbye to the past, Elijah takes off his daylight ring and throws it into a cardboard box, then gets down on one knee and asks Antoinette to marry him. Antoinette accepted. They kissed each other passionately, but Elijah said there was one more thing he needed to do. He took the box and stood by the window. Without hesitation, he pulled open the curtains, allowing the blinding sunlight to ignite every inch of his skin. Along with the box filled with his past, he was reborn from the flames. Having lost his brother, Klaus completely lost his mind. No sooner had he returned to New Orleans than he provoked the city's three major supernatural factions. He baselessly accused the werewolves, vampires, and witches, claiming that each of them had a motive to harm Haley. He demanded that they find Haley as quickly as possible to prove their innocence, and he threatened everyone, saying that if Hope didn't see her mother by sunset today, he would call all his siblings back and let the entire city face the wrath of the Michelson family. Even the humans Klaus compelled them all to join the search. Marcel said Klaus had gone mad, while Hope found a lot of maggots in the school cafeteria. Cole and Rebecca hadn't met up, which must have something to do with what happened when Klaus went to France to find Elijah. Klaus kept insisting that his brother was missing, but suddenly, a piece of paper floated down from the sky apparently. The enemy couldn't hold back and was ready to make a move. The paper had an address written on it. Father and daughter decided to confront it head-on, and they arrived at the location on the note, brimming with hostility. The dark room was filled with cobwebs and dust, with large bloodied handprints appearing on the walls from time to time. But they didn't find Haley. Instead, they saw a line of bloody curse words scrawled on the wall. Coming up empty-handed, Klaus decided to up the ante. He finds Josh in the forest and without a second thought throws Josh into the dungeon of his house. He took a hostage from each of the three factions. He then demanded that the witch cast a spell to imprison them. Colette said she would never do Klaus's bidding, but Klaus retorted, "You still don't understand my rules. You don't have to do it, but your family will all die." Klaus's despicable tactics forced Colette to comply. Vincent was also casting spells at the scene of the crime, certain that the kidnapping and abuse weren't the work of his witches, but Marcel couldn't guarantee that it wasn't someone from his own side. Ivy rushed in, saying that Klaus had taken 3 hostages and threatened that if Haley wasn't found by sunset, all the hostages would die. Klaus's heavy-handed approach first drew Marcel's ire. Marcel took the initiative to confront Klaus, demanding he release the hostages, but Klaus remained stubborn and instead mocked Marcel, saying his people weren't as obedient as he thought. Klaus tossed Marcel 3 letters, instructing him to deliver them to the leaders of each faction. Marcel reluctantly gathered Lisina and Greta. Greta, however, questioned why they should even care about Haley. Arrogantly, she pointed out that Haley wasn't part of the vampire faction and then turned to blame the chaos on the hybrid, Henry. Lisina didn't hesitate to start arguing with Greta. Marcel couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed both women by the throat, warning them that if Josh died because of this, they would all go down with him. As nightfall approached, the search efforts had yielded nothing. Marcel accused Klaus of using his heavy-handed tactics to freeze the entire city in fear, causing all the factions to halt their searches and turn on each other in suspicion. But Klaus responded that he had spent the past 1,000 years doing exactly that, using his enemy's fear to protect his family. He finally opened up to his son, telling Marcel everything that had happened to him in France.
He's gone. Marcellus, he's gone.
Marcel, trying to be supportive, patted Klaus on the shoulder, comforting his wounded heart and encouraging him to pull himself together, reminding him that Haley still needed him. Just then, someone tossed a mysterious small box into the foyer. They opened the box, puzzled, and found a piece of skin from Haley's shoulder inside. The momentarily calmed Klaus lost it again and turned to head to the dungeon to kill the hostages. Marcel tried with all his might to stop him, but Klaus easily knocked him aside. In the dungeon, Colette was opening a magical circle to escape. The werewolf was the first to encounter Klaus, and in a second, Klaus ripped out his heart. Colette quickly met her end at Klaus's fangs. Klaus was about to kill Josh when Vincent arrived just in time to stop his violent act. Hurting innocent people crossed Vincent's line. He snapped Klaus's neck and threw him into a coffin. Marcel remarked that Klaus had turned the entire chicken wing city upside down, yet they still had nothing to show for it. But Klaus replied that this was all part of his plan.
Vincent and the witches worked with us. The wolves were prepared to die for their alpha, but the vampires...
they did nothing but resist.
Marcel then realized that they had torn the enemy's disguise to shreds. Klaus dragged a vampire to the window, pulling back the curtain. The warm sunlight quickly reduced the vampire to ashes. Seeing their innocent comrade meet a grim fate, Greta stepped forward and confessed that she was the one who kidnapped Haley. The next second, Greta was thrown into the Michelson family dungeon. Klaus showed no mercy, using extreme measures to force Greta to reveal Haley's location, but Greta mentioned a name that Klaus didn't even remember. It was the name of a man Klaus met in Germany in 1933 August. Klaus quickly recalled the years he spent disguised as a nouveau riche. He did have a brief encounter with August, but August was a terrorist, a notorious fascist known for his brutal slaughter of werewolves. Clearly, his widow had inherited his lethal tendencies. Greta demanded that Klaus seal the werewolf bloodline within Hope, making it impossible for her to create hybrids. Otherwise, she would kill Haley. Meanwhile, far away in romantic France, Elijah had no idea that his fiancée was also connected to this August. They caught a voyeur, only to discover that he had been obsessively spying on and photographing Elijah and Antoinette's daily lives. Realizing she could no longer hide her past, Antoinette had no choice but to confess everything to Elijah. She was the pianist in the background in 1933 that was also her first meeting with Elijah. She was August's adopted daughter, a pawn and lackey who came and went at her father's beck and call. Elijah rushed to the bar searching for Klaus but found only Antoinette playing the piano alone. Antoinette shared her frustrations about being trapped by August's side. Elijah, out of kindness, pointed her toward a way to escape the city and told her that Shanghai was a good place to start over. It was during this conversation that they exchanged names for the first time, and from that moment, Antoinette developed deep feelings for Elijah. She apologized to Elijah, admitting that she too had a past she wished he didn't know about. The two, each burdened by their own histories, decided to forgive each other and reconcile. To save her mother's life and make amends for her mistakes, Hope decided to join forces with her aunt to seal her werewolf bloodline. But before doing so, she mustered the courage to find her crush, Roman, and gave him her first kiss. What she didn't realize was that Roman also had ties to August. Flashback to 1933. Klaus, deciding to take justice into his own hands, didn't hesitate to rip out August's heart. August's followers vowed to take revenge. Klaus pulled out a coin, announcing that whoever picked it up first would be spared. Then Klaus began his killing spree, taking down one enemy after another, but August's widow picked up the coin. However, she begged Klaus not just for her own life but also for the lives of her son Roman and her daughter Antoinette. Hope cut her palm to draw blood she needed to seal away her werewolf bloodline. Freya placed the moonstone into Hope's blood, closed her eyes, and began chanting. Freya told Hope that the sealing ritual was brutal. The scalding moonstone would have to be branded into her palms, the soles of her feet, and the center of her forehead. Hope felt a bit nervous, but for the sake of her mother's safety, she signaled her aunt to proceed. Freya removed the blood-red moonstone and placed it onto the nearby ritual circle, setting it ablaze. Flames licked at the blood-stained stone, turning it red-hot and scorching. Just as the stone was about to touch Hope's forehead, Klaus rushed in and interrupted the ritual. Klaus, who had once been sealed by his own mother, was determined not to let that same tragic fate befall his daughter. He accused his sister of being too cruel, but Freya argued that losing her mother would be more tragic than losing her powers. Klaus, unable to stay with his daughter for long, grabbed the bowl containing her blood and disappeared into the forest. Josh secretly brought Greta a potion to ease her pain, worried that if she died, they would lose their only lead to finding Haley, but he also agreed with Greta's pure blood ideology, believing that Hope should seal herself to reduce the number of dangerous hybrids in the world. Marcel pointed out that Josh was undoubtedly playing with fire by doing this. Marcel had now fully aligned himself with Klaus, but Josh hoped Marcel would consider the interests of the vampire community more. The two parted on bad terms. Two werewolves awoke from unconsciousness. Klaus forced them to drink Hope's blood. He intended to create more hybrids as punishment for Greta's defiance against the Michelson family. Meanwhile, Greta continued to play the victim with Josh, claiming that if she revealed Haley's whereabouts, Klaus would kill her immediately. Josh tried to reassure her, saying that as long as Haley was alive, Klaus would show some mercy. Josh had no idea that Greta was manipulating him. Seizing the moment, Greta pulled the iron nail from her palm and struck Josh down, mercilessly sinking her fangs into his neck. Roman finally decided to make his move against Hope. He told Hope that he just happened to know a witch who could complete the sealing ritual, but they would need to leave the school first. Desperate to save her mother, Hope didn't hesitate to agree to this risky proposal. Father and son arrived just in time to save the endangered Josh. but Greta had already vanished without a trace. Both men reflected on their mistakes. Marcel admitted he had been too merciful. Klaus confessed he had been too impulsive. Having failed in their first attempt, the two resolved to regroup, but they had no idea that Hope had already been taken away by Roman. Roman took Hope to a mansion in the countryside, where she unexpectedly found her long-lost mother in a dimly lit room. Hope hurriedly ran to her mother, but Haley's gaze was fixed intently on Roman, standing behind Hope. Before Hope could react, Roman clasped a pair of magic-suppressing shackles onto her wrists. Having escaped, Greta sought out Antoinette. She continued to play the victim in front of her daughter and her soon-to-be son-in-law, Elijah, claiming that her son had gotten involved with the youngest Michael's son and was now in constant danger of being torn apart by Klaus. But she was no match for Klaus and could only watch helplessly as her son was caught in peril. Elijah decided to help solve this problem. He put on his daylight ring once again and set off for New Orleans. Antoinette would join him after sunset. Caroline reached out to Klaus, informing him that Hope had run off with a boy. Caroline explained that the school's search team had found that the two kids were not far from New Orleans. They formed an impromptu search party and set off to find Hope. Hope refused to believe that the boy she liked so much could be the one responsible for hurting her mother, but she quickly recalled the time Roman had stroked her hair, realizing that he had used the moment to invade her thoughts. Roman insisted that if Hope sealed herself, Haley would remain unharmed, but Haley told him he was being naive. The enemy had always wanted her dead. Roman, however, was steadfast in his belief in Greta, because Greta was also his mother. Klaus and Caroline tracked Hope's phone. Caroline thought this was just a game between two kids. Klaus asked Caroline if she ever regretted meeting him. Caroline shook her head without hesitation, admitting that bad boys always caught her eye. But when she was with Klaus, she didn't even feel like herself. She said if they could do it all over again, Klaus might never have noticed her at all. But Klaus told her she had always been so radiant, making it impossible to ignore her beauty. This belated confession made both of them smile and put an end to their regrettable romance. Trapped in the mansion, Haley and Hope decided to play along with Greta's plan. They agreed to Greta's terms and decided to seal Haley's werewolf bloodline first. The witch quickly began casting the spell on Haley. The searing moonstone tortured Haley to the point of unbearable pain. When the witch was about to brand the moonstone onto Haley's forehead, Haley kindly asked her daughter to turn away. Haley's screams of agony echoed in Hope's ears. The spell was completed. To verify if the spell had worked, the witch pulled Haley's hand into the sunlight. The scorching rays burned Haley's hand. Haley had become a true vampire, but with that came her freedom. She quickly sank her fangs into the witch's neck. Hope immediately took down Roman. Hope and her mother rushed toward the door, but as they opened it, Hope suddenly stopped. Haley didn't have a daylight ring. She couldn't leave the house.
But you can.